And here we go, episode 5 I guess, which is from my basement here in Portugal. I'm still waiting for the wood to arrive, but in the meantime I'm cracking on with the motor stringers, and I'm going to set up the frames in here. I've decided just to move this forward a bit, because much of the frame or the jig that the boat will sit on, I can dismantle it. There's one piece of wood right down the centre, which is the length of the boat, plus I've sort of got a few centimetres either end, and it's quite a long piece of wood. In fact, I've had to scarf two 4.2 metre bits together, well, an offcut and a 4.2, and I was quite surprised actually how long the boat actually is, because the options for this are either a 19-foot 1-inch boat, or you can make it slightly longer at 20-foot 1-inch, which I've written somewhere for my calculations. So I think it's about 5.6 metres, which is, when you lay it out on the floor, is actually quite a sizable boat. I was quite surprised. In fact, I almost went back then to the 19-foot boat, the smaller one in the American plans. But I looked at the way that these stringers were set out, and it increases the cockpit space by 6 inches, which is what, about nearly 200 mil, 20 centimetres of cockpit space. And I'm quite a big guy, 6'1", and I think the more room is probably going to be very valuable there. As one of the changes that we were discussing with my wife, was that she wants to go skiing off the back of this, and she said rather than having a fixed seat at the front, if you're pulling a skier, then you really want to see what the skier is doing. You could have a mirror obviously, but she said, why don't you have like a swivel chair, something like you see in the men's barbers. And I thought, you know, that's a really good idea. So I had a quick look on eBay. I put it in, and of course you can find them all on eBay. And you can get a pedestal chair, comfortable, padded and all the rest. And I thought, when I come to do the seats, then what I could do is actually just get it recovered in the same material that we're going to do the rear seats, because I'm going to have an open cockpit. The two could be divided. There's one behind the other, so you have 2 and 2, 2 seats at the front, 2 seats at the back. There is a divider in the middle, but if I'm going to have a swivel seat, I thought, well, as long as we get a decent one, it won't detract really from the general patina of this type of boat, which is a sort of a fairly traditional design, but it will just sort of make it slightly more modern in some aspects. Well, obviously, if I fit electric motors, that's going to make it very modern, but everything will be underneath the hatches. So from the outside, it will seem as it should be. Swivel chair, I think it'd be a good idea to do the 2 front, and so then a little bit more room is what I'm saying for that swivel would be a good idea, because if you swing round, you're then going to be facing people potentially sitting in the back, so a bit of knee room would be a good idea. So for that reason, I've gone for the extra length of the boat, and this is the plan. This is what I'm looking at, and this is the critical drawing, I think, and this is the motor stringer here. So unfortunately it's all in feet and inches. 13 foot 5 1/4 long overall. Apply, it says, for the 20 foot 1-inch option, add 2 inches to each dimension, 12 inches overall. So that's 2 inches to each of these, so 6 of them. So it's like 2 foot 2 1/4, so that's 2 foot 4 1/4, which is 718 mil. 2 foot 5 is 737, and so on, as the spacing for the frames, which is from the front end of each member. And so this motor stringer was 13 foot 5 1/4, but I've added 2 inches, so that makes it 14 foot 5 1/4, which is 4.4 meters and 0.6 of a millimeter. So I can't cut to 0.6 of a millimeter, so that's to me is 4.4 meters. So I had to sit and look and think about this. This is the internal frame structure, which is here. So this will raise the whole thing off the ground, and this is quite close to the ground here. These are the bottom of the frames, and I've got to get in there and cut these longitudinals to join that front to back, and to save my poor old back, that needs to be a little bit higher off the ground. So I'm thinking of putting a frame and standing it up at the sort of a height that I can work at quite comfortably on the top to put the keel plate in, but then also give a bit of room underneath there. So I'm going to make these a little bit higher, I think. That's the centre spine, and there it is, 5.8 meters long, and I've already cut that, which is on the floor here, and it's about 600 longer than it needs to be, and here it goes all the way back there into the back of my workshop. And that kind of surprised me, really. It's just quite how long that is. And I'd really quite like to set this up down in the basement here, and I can hang these frames on it. And I think if I clear it all out here, I need to put all of my machines and put them over there, and then I could set this up here in the middle of my workshop, and then get the frames hung, get all these notches cut, and then I can dismantle it, because I've got to take it out through this door, and it's got to go up these stairs. So it's a right old bright day here in Portugal. It's beautiful. Anyway, it's got to go out there because there's no other exit from this basement. So those two pieces of wood I've screwed together, and I'll be doing that the next few days. So what I've started to do is to have a look at these motor stringers, 3.5 inches wide, and I thought, what on earth is that all about? Why? Because the setup levels here were all 3 inches. I thought, why is that? What is that going on about? And once you get this motor stringer, it sits on the top here, the setup level, blow me down, look at that, it's the top of the motor stringer. So why is that 3 inches there, and this is 3.5 inches there, 89 millimeters thick? And of course the clue is here. You know what, read the bloody plans, boys. 1/2 inch deep notches to match the frame thickness. So when you notch that in by 1/2 inch, that's your 3 inches, and that's your setup level at the bottom, which is of course what the floor will lie on, and the engine bolts will, in this section, will bolt the engine into this compartment here, and the floor will go on here. So this setup level is obviously incredibly important. So I need to sort of cut these into your member here, this motor stringer. It also says here that you've got to put plywood on it. And where does it say that now? 12 inch D is the frame thickness. I'll have to find that. But you have to put one length of 3/8 inch plywood onto the side of each motor stringer. For what? I'm not quite sure, but you know, if it was for strength, why not just make it in thicker wood? Anyway, it doesn't explain that very well, but that's what the plans say, so that's what I've done. I'll see if I can find that. Where is it? Oh, how annoying, how annoying. So what I've started to do is cut the motor stringers, and here they are. There's 2 of them, and as you can see, they're 4.4 meters long. So my length of my wood is 4.2. So I've had to scarf a joint, and there it is on here. This one is just come out of the being stuck together with epoxy. This one here is one that I have finished, and my only problem is that if you look down there, it's very slightly bowed by about 10 millimeters in the middle. So I'm going to have to take that bow out when I put it on the frame. which I can bolt together with the legs to take that out, so that's nice and straight. Here's the plywood, as you can see on the inside there, which is giving a bit of extra strength actually to the scarf, which is there. There's the top of the scarf. I'm really pleased how they came out, and that seems incredibly strong. So this is going to be this is 100mm wide, and that's got to be planed down as of yet. And so what I've done is I cut the plywood about 8 or 9mm short of that, so that I just don't end up planing all that plywood off as well. So that's the top of the wood that's got to come off, and as you can see there, that's what it looks like. And when it's planed, I mean, look at this. This is just beautiful. That lovely straight line came out beautifully there. And if I turn it there, you can tell you're cutting at 90 degrees when you get a nice straight edge there. So that may be worth some discussion. There's a little nick. That's me cutting with the circular saw and just letting it flop over the edge instead of holding it flat on the wood, and it just nicks the corner off. So I thought that I would show you how I did it, and I did it with a circular saw, this beast. And the reason that this works is because here is, on the front, is a little laser light which helps you to guide. Now I've got two of those. The other one is a plunge saw with a guide rail, which is this one, a DeWalt guide rail here. And this is where I was cutting the plywood to sit on the side of my motor stringers. So your guide rail, it's plastic underneath to stop it moving. It's so easy. You put it on your piece of wood, obviously set to your correct dimensions. This thing just slots in there, and then moving the guardrail, sorry, I'll point the camera, it sits in that slot. You can see that the blade there is cutting right on the edge of that guide rail. So once you take this up, take the guardrail up, and then you just literally follow this along the guide rail, and because it's got the plastic seats, it doesn't budge, and you just rip along and you get a perfect straight edge. And obviously I did two of those to get one strip of my 9cm plywood for the edges of my motor stringer. So I need to just stop for a second and put this on a steady surface. So here we go. This is my circular saw, and there's the laser on the front, on a little switch, which you can see just shines. And what I've done is I just can put that on that line, and I can literally split that line with the laser, and you can see as soon as you wander off and make a correction. So I'll chop that one, and let you see how it's done. Of course, with all these things, dust management is a problem, particularly down in a basement. So I connect the hoover onto this one. There is a dust bag, but it's just a bit cumbersome. So let's see how this goes, and I'll let you see how I cut it. So, turn on the hoover. And there we go. I mean, that's just a perfectly flat cut. It's just beautiful, just love it. Look at that. And I mean, you can split that line as you saw. And do you know, it makes scarfing joints so much easier. All I did now was just to plane up those few marks there, just so that with the plane you can get it dead flat, but you do want to leave it as a rough surface for the glue. And then I obviously cut the other side, and so I had an extra 20 centimeters to put on, and then that one slapped straight on there, glued it, and those were the results there. So this is my motor stringer, and the plywood's on the other side. As I said, I've cut the plywood at about 9 centimeters, 92 millimeters, something like that. The wood is 100, so hence the lip, and I've got to plane this down to a little bit below the top of this here. So I've got 9 millimeters to take off, and so what I'm doing is I am measuring along here the depth of my motor stringer, which is 89 millimeters. Do you know, it's a really good tip. Tiniest little automatic pencil sharpener, and when you're drawing these things and you want yourself a sharp pencil, there it is, and makes life easy with a sharp pencil. So I'm going to draw that a straight line using this straight edge, and then what I do is, to make sure I've got it bang on 89, I put it at about 88, just inside, because then that's the width of the pencil. And then when you alter one end here, 88, it rotates around the other end, so you've got to go back and check it to make sure you've got exactly the same, 88 to 88, and then hold your fingers down, and then I've got a line to sand to, and I'll do that all the way along, and then I'll strap this down and break out the power plane. So here's my motor stringer. There's my line at 89 mil up from the setup level. 89 millimeters is the thickness, so it's very important that I get that just right, because the top of that is the setup level for the boat, and so I'd cut that to within a millimeter. Should be able to plane that okay. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my electric plane, my DeWalt. It's just a brilliant machine. I've got this fitting which is really good because it's a 90-degree angle, so it will stop you from twisting the face, because obviously I want this at 90 degrees. And one of the really good things, actually, when I do actually have a dust bag here, but this actually, it will clip on there. It fills up quite quickly when you're doing this, and I've found that the best thing is to stick the hose there, and the reason is that I can push this plate here against the side while I'm cutting, and keep it bang on at 90 degrees, and then just keep running it until I come down. I put it on the minimum setting at the moment, so let's start. Brilliant tool, brilliant. Makes life so much easier.
Yeah!
Should have charged the battery, shouldn't I, before I started? You can hear it's just starting to give up. Getting very close. Very close. You know, I'm down there to about 1 millimetre off my line now, all the way down. I mean, it just does a beautiful plane surface. And then what I've tended to do is with the manual plane is just to check that that's okay. But you know what? That looks brilliant. I'll just take that down, that last bit, and then I'll pull the piece of wood back and do the second half of it. That's... And just to check, from there to there has got to be 89 millimeters. That's about 90, so I'm still about 1 millimeter away. You get the idea. Tools make life a lot easier, particularly when you're taking this off, but also the accuracy that they offer. I did think about running about 5 millimeters off on the table saw, but it's such a huge amount of wood to control on a table saw. You start getting inaccuracies, and you don't want inaccuracies. You really want this to be cut flat, but also at 90 degrees. So I'll just go and get my right angled thing and just check I'm getting what I want. So this is interesting, and it's brought up by the fact that as the scarf joint there is at 90 degrees, if this was perfectly perpendicular at right angles to that face there, this here would be at right angles, and it's not, which just shows that this end is coming up slightly, and it looks a lot worse than it actually is, because if you look at that gap, I don't know if you can see that gap there, but that's about 1 millimeter lower here than it is here. And so I'm kind of relying that this guide on the electric plane is at 90 degrees, and it probably is, but the thing is even when you push that, you can see you've still got some wiggle room there to wiggle that backwards and forwards. Even though I'm pushing there, you still see it's not a perfect fit, is it? That plate needs to be deeper down there to stop that wiggling, and I've sort of moved this around and swapped sides to see if I can see what's going on. So I'm not quite sure what this flat plate here is doing, if it should fit it. I mean, it comes in either side obviously, but it's still the same flat plate there. I'm wondering if I'm doing something wrong here, so I'm going to have to try to even that up a little bit. I've still got a bit of play. Yes, I'm on the right side here, so that's okay. I might have to just do that with a plane and go back to my set square and get it absolutely bang on. Okay, here's to go. Did some more, and there we go. Using my good old trusty plane, 2 or 3 runs down this side of the piece of wood, and look at that, the set square is now bang on, and that's bang on 89 mil. So all I have to do is to carry that on along here, because if I use that there, you see there's about 1 millimeter gap, so this is not planing at right angles. I'll have to think about that, but this is just a roughing tool anyway. This is not the precision finish. As ever, the hand tools is the way to finish it, and then you get this perfect line, and you see now that I've done that, that's far better, isn't it? It's at perpendicular to this cut, which shows that we must be at right angles. Good, we're getting there, we're still learning. Well, I've just done the second pass. I'm sort of good half, 2/3 of the way through, and by just making sure I push that right angle edge against the wood, actually using the hose extractor as a guide there. Look at that, that's this time, so it's me, it's not the tool, and that's put that bang on the line. That's my 89mm, and that's bang on square. Much happier with that. So let's carry on. Right, I said this would be a warts and all, mistakes and everything. I did have the first jig made up at the back there, which I tried to make out of my old desktops because I've got loads of that left over. But I put the hung the transom on there. And first of all, taking off all the back, that was all screwed on because I knew I had to take that off, because eventually the deck stringers are going to come, and it says to notch them into here but not into those pieces of wood. That's quite enough landing, but in order to do that, it said that there's this bit here is a doubler for the deck stringers to land on, to presumably give it more base. And this is the right way up at the moment. The engine stringers, motor stringers, are going to sit on there, so it comes up here tight to the, and so I had to cut that out of the wood, which I must admit didn't seem such a great idea. And of course, as soon as I put the weight on it, that's what happened, it split. So I thought, Boycie, you idiot, you know, you really should have done that in the first place. So I'm going to use a piece of the Douglas fir. I'll use a thick piece to cut round there. And I thought, rather than get stuck into that, why don't I get finished with doing the last of my frames. So I'm on 4 and 5, I've cut the uprights. Here's my piece of mahogany. I wish I'd have got mahogany in the first place. Much harder wood, beautiful when it's when that's varnished. That will look fab. But this is right at the front of the boat where the chine is increasing. There's this one, the next one is the full width of the wood, hence why I had to buy that. It will be stronger, and at the front of the boat, that's where it needs it. So that's okay, I can live with that. None of these will be seen, these are all under the floor anyway. But it's just nice to know that there's a really strong piece of wood under the floor. So here I am, I've cut my piece of mahogany, beautiful wood, look at that. And using my spoke shaver, I've cut back to the line, and you can just see the line here on the table that I've marked out. And this one here, you can just see the line disappears there, and it's repeated there, which sort of confirms that's just a slightly high bit. And I mean, we're talking less than a millimetre here. And there's, oh God, there's yesterday's cock up. I don't know how I did that, but I got that line wrong by 3 or 4 millimetres there. Which wasn't desperate news, because all I did is I put the piece of wood that I cut off and glued it back on with some epoxy last night, and then I've just cleaned that up and put it so that it's back on the line there again, which just shows how accurate you've got to be when you're drawing from the main plans, using the carbon paper to draw these little lines. You've got to be spot on, and I don't know how I did that. But that's not the end of the world, because that's going to sit underneath the plywood, and it's not the structural bit out there. I mean, this epoxy I think at times is stronger than the bloody glue, than the wood itself. So these are the bits now I'm going to mark out to do my cuts in. So I've got a cut on the mahogany and the Douglas fir bit, and then put it on the saw, and then I can glue this stuff together. So I want to cut my my joint in here, so I need to cut that halfway on a line. Actually, it's on the piece on the desk, but this I want to set up the saw so that I cut exactly half of that, and that's kind of quite difficult to do. I can guesstimate the depth of the saw there, but if I cut that bit there and then turn it over and cut that bit, and if it chops the piece of wood off, then its blade's too high. If it still leaves the wood on there, then it's too low, so I can just increase it. There's the halfway. turn it over. Actually, that was a good guess. That was a very good guess. Look at that. Just nip that off with a very fine line there. So that's set up exactly halfway. So the bit I didn't show you was this. How to line up my piece of my cut line, which is on the good side, because it's actually going to cut down here on the bottom with the saw, which is why I draw this line as described along the top, because then I can use this, which is this adjustable fence, which is very handy. So I can put my piece of wood there. You'll see that I've drawn a line just on the piece of metal, which is the cut line of the saw, and then by putting that against there, I can adjust then that angle that I need to exactly cut down that line, which is about there. And then once I've got that set, I just tighten this up. The angles are down there if you need them, but I don't need them. So when I start now and cut, they're holding it to this fence. It will cut exactly down that line as required. So here goes. So here's frame 4 left. That's my piece that I've cut, and that's it fitting over the base, the bottom of the boat. That's my half lap joint, and now I've got to cut into this piece of wood, the piece of mahogany, and here's the right side. I see it makes quite a nice fit, and that should, when I've cut that off, that will then be flush. And the bit on the bottom there is just overlapping, but I do that deliberately because then when it's glued, I can shave that bit off. So let's get into that. There's my bottom chine cut out, and there's 4 left and right uprights in place, and then I've got that just about right, because you can see there, if I lift that up, there's a piece of light there, so that's exactly half and half, so that's worked out pretty well. And this one is just a little bit high. I'm going to have to take out just about 0.5 millimeter on there, which I'll probably sand out to get that true. And then I've got to cut, I'm going to cut my pieces of plywood out on both sides. Then I'm ready to go. I'm cutting out the square bits of plywood, which will form the bulk of the strength of those corner joints. And I'm just cutting them out of my 1/2 inch plywood here. And I just wanted to show you how easy it is. You see that laser line there? And you can just line that up and split that. And you can see that line, and you just split it all the way down. It is so deadly accurate. I just need to move the clamp and to get that last bit off. So finally, here's my piece of plywood in the corner. There's doubler, one underneath and one on top. And according to the plans here, it's 3 inches, which is 76 mil up, and 102. Sorry, I'll position the camera properly. 3 inches up and 102 in there, and then cut across. So I've just oversized cut my piece of plywood, and I've marked in there from there to there 101, and up there 76. So that's about the position of my plywood. So all I have to do is to mark that off there, and if I mark that just there in that corner, in fact I could do that just to make absolutely sure, then I can draw that line across to cut it. And then what I'll do is I'll just I've got the other piece up here, making sure this is just holding parallel. I'll double both bits of plywood up, and I'll cut them on the bandsaw. Okay, here we go. There we go. pieces. So I've marked out my plywood fillets or strengthening pieces in the corner. There's the two bits, the horizontal and the vertical, and this is the triangular bit that I'm just put an extra piece of wood in there just to strengthen that out. There doesn't seem any point in leaving that empty, because it's just going to get water. You'd need a limber hole in there. So I've got to cut out a piece of wood which is the same 1 inch thick, 25mm, and this is, I found, the best way of doing it is to transfer that onto a piece of tracing paper, draw the lines on the tracing paper, and then I just stick it on there with a bit of wood glue, let it dry, and then I can just literally use the bandsaw and cut down those lines, and I should have something pretty spot on. Probably other ways of doing it, but that seems to be the simplest. So there's my frames made up. The bottom piece, I've got my two pieces of plywood cut into shape. The upright is sitting there, everything is on the lines. That one is, yep, that's there. I've got my little fillets inside there, got my little fillets there, and I put them in the sander face there to square them off spot on. So everything is looking pretty much set up. And this is the bit where I can check to see how my setup has gone. Because if I put that tape measure on the corner just there, I get 128 centimeters exactly. Now if this is right, set that one there, and look at that. Oh, hang on, let me just, I mean, that's within a millimetre. In fact, no, that's pretty much spot on. That's really nice when that happens, after all this work of cutting out, marking out, and they're exactly symmetrical round the centre line, which means I'm all fit now to start gluing up. And then what I should do is, I think, is just drill a hole maybe through the top bit there, because that's going to be cut out for the shear strake. I'll put my washers. Oh, I've got to cut out my where my kill plank's going to go in. I must do that first. But anyway, I'll screw this with those washers to secure that so it won't move. Do the same on there, and then I can stick some glue in here and well, take these top pieces off. And then what I'll do is put the glue in and just put a nail in there to hold it, and just to make sure nothing moves away. Then I can stick that piece on and then put my nails on, and frame 4 will be well on its way. So here's a question. Here's my bottom plank, and these are the this is the cutout area for the keel planks. There's 2 of them to go in there, so they're both 20mm, so that's 40mm to there, and then that'll obviously have to be planed off to fed off for the planking. So my question is, if anybody's out there who knows more than me, and there's probably a lot of people, I've got to cut that bit out, and this bit along the bottom here is no problem. I mean, I can cut down here with the saw to the line, but how do I make that line, how do I get that so it's exactly flat and true? There must be a better way to doing it than what I'm doing, which is really to sort of cut this now with a chisel and then use a chisel to sort of flatten it out. Is there a better way of doing it? Perhaps somebody watching this video in the remarks will let me know.